The observation deck of the Void's Mercy trembled as another plasma round struck the ship's failing shields. Ilara Wynn pressed her small frame against the cold bulkhead, her breath forming tiny clouds in the rapidly cooling air. Around her, a dozen predator cubs, each nearly twice her size, chittered and hissed in panic, their razor-sharp claws scraping against the metal floor. "Hull breach in Section 7, the ship's AI announced with mechanical indifference. "Life support compromised. Evacuation recommended." Ilara's brown eyes darted to the sealed blast door ahead. Beyond it lay the emergency pods, their only chance of survival. But between them and safety stood that door, and according to her datapad, the manual override was on the other side, in a corridor now exposed to vacuum. "We're going to die," whimpered one of the cubs. A small Crithian with silver fur and eyes like molten gold. "No," Ilara said quietly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We're not." Cub Thurn, the largest of the group and easily 3 times Ilara's weight, pushed forward. His species, the Vraxian predators, were apex hunters from a high-gravity world where even the prey could tear through steel. His obsidian scales gleamed under the emergency lighting, and his double rows of teeth glinted as he spoke. "The human speaks," he hissed, his translator rendering his words with barely concealed disdain. "What can you do, soft skin? You have no claws, no armor, no venom. Your world had prey animals larger than you. You shouldn't even exist as a species." Ilara had heard it all before. In the 2 years since humanity had joined the galactic community, she'd grown accustomed to the confusion her species inspired. Humans were weak by galactic standards. No natural weapons, fragile bones, thin skin, and a home world that was considered a paradise compared to the death worlds that bred most spacefaring races. "Stay behind me," Ilara murmured, moving toward the airlock controls. Thurn's laugh was like rocks grinding together. "But you're so small." Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the dim red glow of emergency systems. Ilara's fingers flew across the airlock panel, her mind calculating rapidly. The corridor beyond was exposed to space, roughly 15 meters to the manual override. 30 seconds in vacuum, maybe 45 if she was lucky. "What are you doing?" demanded Thurn. "Saving us," Ilara replied. She stripped off her jacket and wrapped it around her datapad, tucking it into her belt. Then she began a breathing exercise, rapid, deep inhalations that would flood her blood with oxygen. "You can't survive vacuum," one of the other cubs cried. "Even we can't survive vacuum." "Not for long," Ilara agreed between breaths. "But I don't need long." She'd never told them about humanity's strange ability to survive brief vacuum exposure. Why would she? It wasn't impressive by galactic standards, just another quirk of her species' bizarre physiology. But right now it was all she had. "Human, stop!" Thurn grabbed her shoulder with one massive claw. "You'll die in seconds, let me—" "You'll die in less," Ilara interrupted, meeting his eyes. "Your species can't equalize pressure fast enough. Your blood will boil." "Mine won't, not immediately." Before he could respond, she slapped the airlock release. The door exploded outward, and Ilara threw herself into the howling vacuum. The cold hit her like a physical blow, so intense it burned. Her eyes felt like they would burst from her skull. Ice crystals formed instantly on her skin. But she'd exhaled just before entering, the first rule of vacuum survival, preventing her lungs from rupturing. 15 meters. She could see the override panel, its green indicator light mocking her. Her hands were already going numb. The moisture in her mouth boiled away. She couldn't hear anything. Sound didn't exist here. Just her heartbeat, loud and frantic in her ears, and the growing pressure in her chest as her body screamed for oxygen. 10 meters. Her vision began to tunnel. She kicked off a wall, using the zero gravity to propel herself forward. In her peripheral vision, she could see the cubs pressed against the airlock window, their faces masks of horror. 5 meters. Her fingers closed around the panel. She couldn't feel them anymore, working on muscle memory alone. The datapad. She needed her datapad. Her frozen fingers fumbled with her belt. Everything was going dark. The emergency override code. 6 digits. She'd memorized them. Her thumb moved across the screen, each press an act of pure will. The panel flashed green. The blast door groaned, then slowly began to slide open. Beyond it, Ilara could see the emergency pods, their lights beckoning like distant stars. She turned, intending to pull herself back to the airlock, but her legs wouldn't respond. Her lungs were fire. Her consciousness was a flickering candle in a hurricane. Then something massive grabbed her. Thurn, wearing an emergency suit he'd somehow found, his claws impossibly gentle as they wrapped around her tiny human frame. He yanked her back into the airlock and the door sealed behind them. Pressure returned in a rush. Ilara gasped, her lungs expanding painfully as air flooded back into them. She coughed, tasted copper, and realized she was bleeding from her nose and ears. But she was alive. "Impossible," Thurn whispered, his translator barely functional through his shock. "You were in vacuum for 37 seconds. You should be dead." Ilara wiped the blood from her face with a shaking hand and managed a weak smile. "Humans are persistence hunters," she said hoarsely. "We don't quit, even when we should. Especially when cubs need protecting." The cubs surged forward, their earlier fear replaced by something else, awe perhaps, or the beginning of understanding. They helped her to her feet, their claws carefully retracted, supporting her weight as they moved toward the pods. "I called you weak," Thurn said quietly. "I was wrong." "No," Ilara corrected, leaning heavily against him. "You weren't. I am weak. I'm small and soft and slow." She looked up at him, her brown eyes fierce despite her battered state. "But I'm human, and we protect our own, no matter the cost." As they loaded into the emergency pods, the Void's mercy beginning its final death throes behind them, Cub Thurn looked at the small human who had saved them all. He thought about his species' strength, their claws and scales and venom. And he realized that perhaps there were different kinds of strength, kinds his people had never needed to develop. The humans, those strange, fragile, impossible beings, had developed them all. And the galaxy was only beginning to understand what that meant. Retry.